Well. Here we are again, back at the table.
Yeah, another year older.
Another year older. You'll see a little bit of the can't really catch it all, but I did turn 50 last week.
Yeah, we're in the birthday room.
In the birthday room.
I like it.
Amen. Good to see you all today. Again, welcome to Freddie O Live, where we're talking about reachable reconciliation. Last week, our topic was the elephant in the room, and just I think in like 24 hours, we had almost 1,000 views. And so I want to thank you for taking a look at that and sharing it. Excited to have my great friend Chris Cox back at the table with me, having some dialogue. Again, Chris is with Back to Back Ministries, great friend, lover of people, and so excited to have you here again, man.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
Looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Well, dude, let's roll back into, try to pick up from where we left off.
Right on.
We're going to go into part 2 of the elephant in the room. And I think I want to start off reflecting on an organization that I used to be a part of. So in this organization, we were part of an umbrella, right? Yeah. And this particular organization was more or less like the lost leader, the stepchild, but was still the brand, okay? Now, as an individual entity, we knew that we were struggling, even though we were a brand.
Yeah.
So, of course, we would have dialogue about it. But whenever we got to the bigger entity, the entire umbrella, we'd get together and have meetings and retreats, etc. They'd never discuss the challenges that was going on internally with that one organization. And when that happens, Chris, that's a problem. Right?
For sure, yeah.
Because that's an elephant that we are not addressing, so it begins to affect culture.
Yeah.
So when I say culture not being an isolated moment, right?
Sure.
But culture being patterns. So it's the patterns of thinking and the patterns of why we do what we do, our behaviors.
Yeah.
And it's our language, right? It's the way we communicate, it's our aura. That becomes the culture. And I think what becomes the challenge is that as individuals, if we opt out of addressing the elephant in the room, we're affecting culture and we become part of the problem and not the solution.
Yeah, you can't solve a problem that no one is talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Like you can't solve it because you're not even sure if it's a problem. You're not even sure why we're not addressing the problem.
Right.
And you end up addressing the behavior instead of the actual belief system. So one of my friends, his name's David, and David is notorious for saying that most of the time we spend addressing behavior.
Yeah.
And behavior is actually a result of emotion. Right, so you come in emotionally charged, and then that dictates your behavior. I'm going to sit at this table, not going to sit at this table. This is how I'm going to treat the waitress. This is how I'm going to filter everything my boss is saying.
Sure.
But all of emotion actually stems from our belief system. And the belief system is the elephant in the room, right?
Absolutely.
So if I come in your scenario, if I come in and say, we all know that we're not in a good place and that we're the stepchild or that this puzzle is not really fitting together well or we haven't been succeeding, we come in with a belief system that everything's not okay.
Absolutely.
Well, then we sit at a table and we hear all these messages that say, we're okay and we're going to do great and we're going to have a conference or we're going to have a vacation together. Rah, rah, rah. Like the team is great. But we were 1-16 last year, right? Like, we're not great. And so our emotion then says, I don't trust you.
Yeah.
So my behavior is then fight, flight, or freeze. My behavior is not, tell me more.
Right.
My behavior is, prove it. Because when you prove it, then I'll be all in. So what happens is, as an organizational leader, if you're not getting great behavior from your team,
Yeah.
it's probably because they're showing you emotions that you don't love, which means they have a belief system that's different than yours. Elephant in the room.
Yeah.
There's something that needs to be addressed that everybody's not talking about. So you're probably not getting the best work out of your team. You're probably not getting the best results.
Absolutely.
You're pitching this amazing speech and they're not in.
Yeah.
You can also throw this in parenting too, right? So if your behavior from your kids is not what you want, it's probably stems from emotion. And you see those emotions that you don't love, it goes back to what they believe, probably about themselves, right? So in a parenting world, it's probably asking the question, what do you believe about yourself right now?
Yeah.
Are you good? Organizationally, it's what do you believe about us right now?
Sure.
What do you think's going on? Well, you're talking about this amazing event, and I'm wondering, am I going to have a job in 3 months? Like, there's this difference. And when there's space to be able to have that conversation, things move forward.
Right.
So the conversation, though, is how do you create that space, right? How do you actually create a space where, in an organization, Fred, who is sitting in the crowd at an event, has a voice to be able to articulate, but I'm worried about this.
Sure.
Like, I want to know if this thing is going to be taken care of.
Right. So for people that have outgoing personalities, it seems very easy to do. But how do we do that so that any individual, regardless of the historical patterns that either you're used to or the historical patterns that have been created in the culture, how do we do it even if our personality may not be one that's aggressive?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because it feels like that if you're an extrovert, it's an easy answer.
Right.
The reality is though that's an elephant in the room too. Extroverts don't address perspective well. Extroverts just create space for things to be addressed.
Right.
Right. An extrovert walks into the room and they don't have a problem creating a space for conversation.
Sure.
But they don't necessarily. That doesn't mean that they know what to talk about.
Right.
So what the key is.
Which means that it's important for the extrovert and the introvert.
Right. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can say surface level thinker, deep thinker, doesn't really matter.
Right.
I think that what really starts helping with elephants in the room is that people need to be present with each other.
Tell me about that.
So when I am with someone, whether I know them or not, the more time spent together, the more I can hear their perspective, or the more I can see what their perspective is about me. Sure. And I have a strong personality. I've always had a strong personality. You're surprised, right?
That's one of those Eddie
You're
Murphy
shocked.
on the camera, like
you're so shocked, right? You are just, your mind is blown because you're just like, really, you? So I've known that about myself.
Yeah.
But after a period of time, I've heard in the history of my relationships with people, I didn't like you the first time I met you, and I'm like, oh, shocking. Why?
Right.
Like, I'm for you. I'm so for you. And they're like, I just felt like you probably weren't going to listen to me because you have a strong personality.
Yeah.
Cool. I can hear that.
Right.
I can hear that and then ask, but what do you think now?
Right.
Well, after spending time together, I realized, and then whatever that conclusion is, sometimes it's, I realize you really do still have a strong personality, or it could be something different. And it's when I'm present with others, I can gain a respect for the other people, but also someone who's not going to raise their hand in a corporate boardroom setting and say, but are we even going to exist next month? If we're present with each other, they can say, man, I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I'm concerned.
Yeah.
How are you going to navigate this? Because in 3 months, I don't see these two organizations working out together. Like, is one going to eat the other?
Right.
You can ask a question. You can also say, hey, I just feel overwhelmed right now. And when we're present with one another, then we can see perspectives start to change.
So, Chris, being present, does it start in the moment, let's say, in a meeting, if you're a part of the staff, or does being present start with relationship outside of the meeting room? Because I'm wondering, how comfortable will I feel in the room addressing the elephant if I haven't spent time outside of the room with somebody to feel comfortable enough to share?
Yeah, so there's two sides to that, right? So if you're the leader of an organization, you're going, I don't necessarily know that I have margin to always build relationships with people that I'm going to have in a meeting in order for us to keep the organization going.
Fair, yeah.
And I hear that, but I would also ask the question back of, if you've gotten a seat at that table and you're in that room to have a conversation,
it's key.
Where has the presence happened before in order to get you a seat at that meeting? Right? So I don't think the meeting has anything to do with it.
Okay.
I honestly think that if something comes up and you see there's an elephant in the room and it happens at a meeting, you should be taking a note on whether or not you're the leader or you're a participant in the room. If you have a seat at the table, then you have an invitation to be present with someone else and bring that up. Maybe it's not with the head of your organization. Maybe it's with your direct report.
Sure.
Because sometimes bringing up an elephant in the room in a corporate meeting is cutting the legs out of your leader, right? And it's not going to help. The conversation about being present is, who are you being present with, and do they know your perspective about the elephant in the room?
So which one is greater? And
yeah,
I know you know the answer to this. I just want you to share it. Because there's a risk involved, right?
Yeah, right.
And
always.
So especially if you're going to address the elephant. So is the risk greater not to address the elephant and maybe be able to maintain and feel like I'm still going to exist afterwards?
Yeah.
Or is it better to take the risk and address the elephant in the room? How do you weigh the two?
Yeah, you have to read the room, right? Like, do you have currency in the room?
Right.
So if we're gonna stick with the elephant analogy, the idea, the question I would ask is, will the elephant listen to you? If you address an elephant in the room, do you have the ability? Like, are you the elephant Pied Piper? Are you the maestro of whatever? Can you get it out? Because if you don't have any power to get it out in a corporate setting or in a large congregational setting or in a team setting, addressing the elephant is probably just going to piss people off.
Right.
And that's not going to be a win for you. So reading the room of being able to say, is the reason that we're not moving forward because this is really going on? If you have an ability to navigate the elephant out of the room, get after it. Like, just do it. No one is going to do it for you. Don't wait. You don't have to be an extrovert. You just simply say, I'm just wondering.
Sure. Because
you have the relational acumen in the room. If you don't have that acumen in the room, if you don't have that currency or that value in the room, then you have to go, I know what's wrong here. Who has the baton? Who has the piper? Who's who can get it out? I need to go sit with them and I need to be present with them and say, what are you thinking? What are you seeing?
Yeah.
Because if you think you can walk this out of the room, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you walking it out, because we've got to get this thing out of the room in order for the health of the community, the organization, whatever it is. But it's pride that says it has to be me.
Right.
It's also pride that says it can't be me. Like, on both sides of the coin.
Sure.
And you have to decide who can get this thing out to move from out of here. And so it's presence in the meeting, but it's also presence with your team. So if you're a leader of an organization, if you're a leader of a team, and you don't have a relationship with the people that are at the table, that you've invited to the table, then you don't get to address any elephants. You need to be present with them.
Sure.
Because they'll deal with anything you want.
That's good, Chris. And I like where you started at the beginning of that by saying if you're in the room, then you have the capital.
Yeah, right? You probably do, right?
To be able to address it. That's good. So, so being present. Okay. What's another?
Yeah, the next one that I think you absolutely have to do is be empathetic, and I think we skip this step. I think social media causes us to skip this step. I think our need to accomplish things makes us skip this step. But here's what I think is that when someone else is speaking, when you're speaking to me, when one of our friends is speaking to me, what one of my life scripts has become is to say, how do I empathize through imagination with them? How do I listen as if I could feel what they're feeling? Like the words that they're using, this is different than I don't want to put myself in someone else's shoes. I don't want to take your story and say, I know exactly how you feel. I don't know how you feel.
Sure.
But I can empathize and say, you just telling me that story, I felt the weight of that. Like, that was heavy for me to hear, or that was confusing to me too as you said it.
Right.
Or can I just take a minute and go cry because that was overwhelming, your story? I haven't thought about it like that. So empathy leads to a response of saying, I've not thought about it like that. I've not heard that before.
Yeah.
I wonder where you're coming from. So empathy in corporate settings, I think, could be huge. Empathy in relationship settings, when people tell us stories or when we read someone else's stories, instead of giving our 2 cents back into the story, we need to recognize that people are asking us to address something in the room because it's overwhelming them. They're not asking whether or not it is overwhelming us.
Right. That's good. And when we talk about empathy and we're talking about reachable reconciliation, you have to want to care.
Oh, right. So empathy says,
right,
I want to address what's between us,
right,
or what's keeping us from being the best version of us.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to feel a perspective of what you are feeling and ask a question of saying, Fred, tell me more about that because I've never felt that. Like last week, you made a scenario that even I interjected. And I'm like, I have never once walked into a room and had that happen to me. No one has sized me up, right? So I'm sitting down, but I'm not very tall, so that was a height joke. No one has sized me up in a room as to whether or not I'm dangerous or not walking into a room.
Yeah.
And so by you saying it last week, and you made reference to that, and I'm going, no one's ever done that for me.
Right.
No one's ever. So empathy in that scenario of me empathizing is to say, I might not have the only perspective on this topic because there's a different angle to this, and I can't see that angle, and I'm not supposed to see that angle. I'm just supposed to hear that angle and ask questions about it.
Sure. That's good, Chris. That's good. Okay, so being present.
Okay. Be empathetic.
Be empathetic.
And then we have to be open.
Okay.
Right? No elephants will ever leave a room when the room is built out of just walls. We need a door. And we need a door big enough for an elephant to get out of it. That may mean knocking a wall down, but we have to replace it with a door.
Yeah.
And it has to be a door that an elephant can walk out, that can fit out. And that's openness. It's the door of openness. And by openness, like I started to tell you a story last week about my sister and her husband and a family member.
Good story. Yeah.
Right? So my brother-in-law decided to be present with this family member.
Yeah.
To empathize with him. Like, this is the interesting thing, is so the minority in the family who's entering into this like oppressive space where he's going to hear some things and be called some things, he instead decides to empathize with the family member. Because
he was present in multiple situations.
And because he wanted the elephant out of the room.
Right.
Like, he's the victim in the space.
Right.
And he still walks in, and so this family member gets sick. And so my brother-in-law goes and sits at the hospital and is present with the family member while he's in a coma and going through some stuff. And so his presence and his empathy in this space leads this story to a place where he says, your family, I'm open to like going through the pain in order to keep you. And so then this family member ends up coming out of this space, and he looks over and he says to a nurse, this is Julius. He's my grandson.
Wow.
You'll never meet a better man.
Wow. That's rich.
Openness happens in response. So it's my grandfather, right? So my grandfather ends up opening up because someone was present and empathetic toward him.
Yeah. Wow.
So this is where the story starts to shift, is when you're present and empathetic. And you can push on this if you want to, because there hasn't been a lot of times in my life where I've been in the space where I really had to make the massive sacrifice to be present and to be empathetic. Now, there have been a few times.
Sure.
But you can push back on the impossibility of that, or the depth of that, or the pain of that.
Sure.
But I've seen it through my brother-in-law, who just is amazing to me, of watching what he's done. But his presence and his empathy, in spite of the elephant in the room, took a wall and knocked it down and made a door. And so then my grandfather comes in and says, I'm open to you.
Yeah. I can say that's a good story, Chris. Thanks for sharing that, man. That's rich. I would say that it's not necessarily pushback per se, but I think culturally meaning whether it's race or whether it's
Yeah.
gender
Yeah.
or it's personalities, you can be the one to feel like you're making the sacrifices more
Yeah.
than someone else. I know you got something to say, and so at some point it feels you get tired, right?
Yeah. Yes. Right.
But I think I have learned to encourage myself in a manner that I can't get weary in well doing, right? I can't get tired in it, because whether it's one individual or more than one that's in the room, somebody was empathetic because they were present with me, and that person or persons will be of greater value as they go forward, right?
Yeah.
In making this transition and this reconciliation happen
Yeah.
in a greater way.
So the door starts to open
Right.
when the person, so in this situation, my brother-in-law, when he's able to be at a bedside,
Yeah.
because he knows he's not alone, right? So him being part of community didn't hinge on whether or not my grandfather accepted him,
Yeah.
because he was already accepted, right?
Right.
Because we were with him. We were with this relationship. We were with
Yeah.
the family. So if he's alone,
Sure.
he can't sit next to that bed.
Yeah.
So that's like so that's like, if I were to watch this back, the devil's advocate part of me says, "Oh, here you are, the white guy again, saying that like we should go and we have to be the ones being present and being empathetic when we're in the tough places."
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm actually saying
No, I'm just kidding.
that's not what I meant to be saying. So we can delete this and start over. That's what they all say.
I know, that's bad. That's bad.
I'm the last guy that you think would ever be in that space.
You're right.
Because I refuse to let us I refuse to let anyone off the hook. Right? Whoever needs to be present and needs to be empathetic has to have so much support and community that they can be present and be empathetic in the space.
Sure.
And for me, what I've learned over time is that I'm not often the one who is sitting in the space and going, if I'm present, this will help. I'm actually the one behind you saying, Fred, if you want to be present in that space, I'm with you.
Sure.
So if you want to go and take that on, you're not taking that on alone. Sure. And I think that the elephant in the room in any situation is best addressed when the person who is supposed to address it is not alone in addressing it, and that they know they have a community behind them, and that they have people who are advocating for them, and they can go, hey, hurt people hurt people.
Right.
So they probably said some things to you in getting that out, but look at that. The wall's starting to come down, and I'm with you. So so there has to be a community. I just don't want to take it into a space where it's never on one person to get an elephant out of the room.
Sure.
One person might be the voice that moves the wall. One person might be swinging the sledgehammer to knock the wall down.
Sure.
But it's usually everyone in the room who's pinned in by this element going, get him, get him out. Like, we're with you. So you need people with you, and the people that are with you cannot just be representatives of the people who are being oppressed by the elephant, right? The people that are with you need to be healthy leaders, healthy advocates, people that can see 360 degrees around the problem. Like, you need a team. If you're going to address an elephant, and this works really well corporately as well, if you're going to address an elephant in the room and all you're doing is representing the oppressed in your corporate environment or the stepchild in the space, nobody cares because you're the stepchild.
Sure.
You need to be present with the people that can see from a corporate level of going, best thing for the organization is this elephant goes away because we need this team functioning really, really well. Absolutely. But they need to see it from another side.
And I think, Chris, so obviously it takes time. Some time. And going back to me talking about sometimes you may be the one that feels like you're always that sacrificial lamb, for lack of better words, and pioneering that. So I think what has also helped me, because a lot of times as a minority I'll be the only one, right? The reconciliation piece. Even
did you just say from like you're the only? That can't happen anymore, right? Like, can we just say that can't happen?
You mean like one person?
You're the only person in the space doing this. From the minority, like, people bring you into a room, and you've told me this before. People bring you into the room, and they look at you to address right? So talk to us about race, Fred.
I don't want to. Let me finish this.
No,
point.
but yeah,
Let me
but
finish this
that
point.
can't keep happening.
I know. Well, and so what I'm saying is, for me to refuel, sometimes I have to be present outside of the room with other people who are like me, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so I say that to encourage others that sometimes in your professional space or your organizational space, whatever other relationships and environments, make sure that you find somebody else that is empathetic in the same manner, because you're going to need that fuel so that you can go back into the space and feel the pulse of the room to address the elephant, right? So now what you're talking about.
What I'm talking about is that on teams, the more teachable we become on teams, the less you'll have to make that statement of that when you come on a team, all of the other team members in the room are looking at you and saying, Fred, can you talk to us about diversity? Can you talk to us about reconciliation? Because the more teachable the team is, the more...
But it's hard, Chris, because you don't know what you don't know. And so if the majority of the room is one group, and then there's me or the introvert or the woman or whatever it may be, well, you're obviously the minority in the room. And to say that that's not going to happen or we got to fix it, well, that means we've got to expand the room to be more diverse. And that's just not happening that much.
But that's terrible.
Well, it's 2018, Doc. And
I know,
still
which is what I'm saying. Like, if you're watching this with me, here's our elephant in the room. Fred is not the only accomplished black man that can be on a team. And so we can't just wait. We can't have a unicorn in this space where there's only one, right? We're not going to be healthy teams when it's like predominantly white male and we've got a woman and a minority. We feel good about it. We can't do that. We have to continually ask the question, which is like so my passionate question is who's missing? Not who's not here, not do we have numbers, but who's missing? And who's missing to me is anyone who has a perspective that makes us better and makes us more diverse and makes us more unified, because I can't be present. Everyone can't be present with Fred at the same time.
Sure.
So we have to have these healthy teams, not status quo teams.
It is, right. Now, we're gonna come back to that
Let's
on
do
another
that some other day.
podcast, because that's a whole other lane. And when I say that, is basically what you're saying is there's value, right, in expanding and see not every entity or setting or environment feels like it is of value to expand from a diverse standpoint. So we can't even address that. Let's go back, because we want to honor those that are watching. And so I think you have one more point. So you talked about being present. You talked about making sure that you're empathetic and that you're being open. And so I think you had a last one.
Yeah, I kind of slid it in there a little bit just offhandedly, but it's just be teachable, right? Like if I'm teachable in a space, then and you said it earlier, I can't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
And if I'm not teachable, then I believe that I know everything already. And then I'm good enough, and that life through the lens of my education and my experience is going to be good enough. And that's just not good enough.
Doc, there are so many people that are not teachable.
For sure.
So many people in society think that they're the ones that know everything.
Right on.
And I don't understand that.
I don't either. And yet success and teachability have not come hand in hand.
Yeah.
Some people have been successful and not had to be teachable.
Yeah.
But I would say if you're successful and you're not teachable, you're probably lonely.
I agree.
And I would rather be in community and be teachable and have different experiences for the rest of my life and not land in that same definition of success.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, Chris, we're going to close out here, man. Yeah. We want to thank you for watching and listening. And obviously, you can tell we could go a bunch of different ways.
For days.
Here's what we'd love for you to do. One, if you're watching on Facebook Live, we'd love for you to send comments back and let us know what you thought of the dialogue. Mm-hmm. Give us some responses on, hey, we'd love for you to touch more on this aspect, or could you consider maybe having a dialogue along this lane? We'd love to do that for you. If you're not watching it on Facebook Live, and maybe you're just watching it from the YouTube, certainly subscribe to the YouTube page, and we'd love for you to give comments back there. Anything else that I'm missing, Chris, in that?
No, that's great.
Yeah. And so, hey, we love you. We care about you. And remember that who you are and what you do matters. Thanks.